Hello, and welcome back to We're Not So Different, a podcast about how we've always been idiots. My name is Luke Waters. I'm an amateurish historian, and as always, I'm joined by Dr. Eleanor Yaniga, who is anything but. Today, we have an interview, so that means we have no question. But subscribe to the Patreon
Hmm.
because it's fun and you'll feel better and we'll feel better and you'll feel better
Yeah,
knowing that we feel better.
exactly.
Patreon.com/WSD pod. Yeah, you get a bunch of bonus episodes. We did one about Habsburg news that was actually really fun.
Yep.
And then we have our continuing book club series on The Name of the Rose coming up
Hmm.
in early June. So yeah. Anyway, on to the main show. So, folks, you ever get mad about the way people talk about history or historical events? Well, I mean, certainly not. You, the astute history podcast listener, are simply too refined and your nature too genteel to be baited into anger over such trifling matters as ahistorical opinions. You've never heard someone say something so stupid or just plain wrong that you begin sputtering in exasperation at the mere idea of it. You'd never, ever allow your entire day to be ruined over an off the cuff ahistorical joke that is of little to no importance to the wider world. You, the intrepid listener, wouldn't let friendships be ruined over minor, petty interpretations of history. It's just not in your nature. And to be honest, it's great that we have peacemakers like you left in the world, as we history podcasters are a much more surly, much more ornery lot. We'll start a slap fight over any major or minor disagreement about history, even one where we actually agreed but got into an argument because we misheard what they said.
Yep.
Now, to be fair, most of these fights are more or less just petty bickering, usually done online or over a drink. They don't involve physical violence at all. But sometimes, oh, sometimes, the fights turn into feuds and they escalate to the point that they reach a fever pitch, and violence is the only refuge left in which to settle things. It is at that point that we must personally confront our ahistorical enemy, remove our white satin gloves of historical truth, slap our enemy across the face with said glove, and demand satisfaction for our besmirched honor in the form of a duel. At dawn the next day, we would meet our enemy on the field, take 10 paces, turn, and fire our pistols. The winner, us, obviously,
Duh.
would be proclaimed the greatest history knower, while the loser would be relegated to the dustbin of history. No, I'm just kidding. We would just whine about it to our friends and ideological fellow travelers, blog about it, subtweet them, or complain about it in group DMs. But regardless of that, we do have Paul Bavill, co-host of the History Rage podcast, here to talk with us about dueling, including the conceptions of honor, single combat, trial by combat, and whether or not my demands for satisfaction will be met. Paul, how the hell are you?
I'm feeling much better after that intro because that was a tour de force as well.
Thank
Right.
That's
you.
thank you. Yeah.
I'll be completely honest. I usually feel like I'm just writing these for myself, so it's good to know that somebody else enjoyed one for once.
If you only have an audience of one, Luke, you have a grateful audience here.
There you
That's
go.
right. Thank you. All right. Yeah, so you guys know the deal. I'm gonna let these two scholars go off on it, but I'll get the first one out of the way. Let's start with honor. Paul, what the hell is it, and why was it so important to people in the past? So important that they would fight to the death over it in some cases.
Okay, so this is the kind of first part of all of my study where I depart from everything that we would normally think.
Hmm.
Because if you look at the concept of dueling, single combat, particularly like 19th century pistol dueling, it makes no bloody sense at all to be killing people over this mythical concept of honor. And so I started to look at, okay, well, you're clearly having this fight over something. And honor is the term that we are bandying around to use. But is it really?
Hmm.
And no, it isn't. So
Okay.
the kind of theory, and I'll say right at the start here, cards on the table. A lot to do with dueling is going to be theory and is actually quite difficult to prove. It's a somewhat unique crime in that you've got to tell the world that you've done it, but you keep the information really limited to make sure that you don't get prosecuted for something. And I'll
Right.
come to legalities a little later on. So everything's kind of sketchy as to why. what's going through these people's heads when they duel. But I started to look at it in a different way because my background actually isn't history. History is my enthusiasm, but my background was science. So I started to think about this in terms more of how would people behave? Why would you fight a duel? So where you see the word honor, I want you to substitute the word reputation.
Okay.
This is a very important difference because where we get this idea of honor from, and I know you'll be on board with this, Eleanor, is for everything that's misrepresented in history, who can we blame? The bloody Victorians.
It's the Victorians.
Always the Victorians. And Victorians give us this idea of honor in terms of kind of chivalry, Ivanhoe style. You know, everything is fair play and you're going to respond to this sort of insult with death, and you're absolutely not. Okay, so I am a Georgian specialist, so I'm going to be talking mostly in like 19th century terms.
Yep.
But we will go a little bit further back into history. But starting with this concept of reputation, okay, you need a good reputation at this time because that is actually what is going to be the making of you, your family, and so forth. Okay, so if you are a politician, then we could dispense with the word honor straight away there, can't we?
Yeah.
But what you do need is patronage. It's fine to get yourself voted into as a member of parliament. But if you want to advance, if you want that cushy job as the governor of the Bahamas, you're going to need patronage, which means that people need to think highly of you. Okay, your reputation counts for a lot more then than it does now. Okay,
Right.
If you're an academic, then you want to be taken as somebody who is professional, has done the work, has got the work ethic, has got the intelligence, but also somebody who's going to stand by their beliefs and things like that as well. And that's what gets you up the academic ladder, as well as submitting papers that people can trust. Trust is important here. The big demographic that fight the most duels are officers. Officers in the army. Less so in the Navy, but it does happen a lot in the Navy. But the reason it happens for the bulk of it in the army is you have a system of buying a commission. So, Luke, can I just ask, do you have an older brother?
I don't. I have a younger sister.
You have a younger sister, so you are the eldest.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you are going to be in a wonderful position then in a good Georgian family because you're going to inherit the bloody lot.
Yes. Okay. Nice.
Yes. Whereas, if you're a second son, you are going to inherit the square root of fuck all. And your route to actually getting your personal fortune, a good method of this is to go into the army. So your father pays about £300 for you to be an ensign commission in a decent regiment, such as the Lifeguards or the Coldstreams or something like that. Okay, and then what you're going to do is you're going to go through the rest of your career fighting with blue bloody glory, killing as many Frenchmen or Tartars or whatever you're up against as you possibly can, and get promoted. Now, when 20 years later, you can get yourself promoted up to something like Lieutenant Colonel. What you do then is you sell that commission. And you sell that commission for somewhere in the region of about £8,500. Set up, pension, sorted. Okay, so to put those into kind of a little bit more modern terms, you are paying about £8,000 to buy your way into the army as an ensign, and you are selling for about £750,000.
Right.
Okay. So here is the thing. If you are at all deemed a coward by the army, they can cashier you out. And that means you are fired and they keep the money. No pension, no nothing. And at this point, you have got absolutely no skills, beyond shooting Frenchmen, which doesn't have that much in the way of private sector employment opportunities.
Well, you say that, but
I mean, it's there, but it's not as good a deal. But you're left there with nothing. You've got no marriage prospects because you're a coward. Nobody's going to want to get involved with you. So you can't marry money. You're going to find it very difficult to earn money. You may be able to become a mercenary, but hell, who's going to hire a coward?
Yeah. Okay.
And as such, you can go from, high society to almost workhouse level pretty much overnight as a result of this. So it's really important that cowardice rap doesn't stick, because it will ruin your life. Now, if I turned up to you, either of you today, and just went, well, I've listened to your podcast, guys, it's shit. Now, you're going to feel a bit put out by that, but you're probably not going to kill me over it. Or if you are, because I can see the look on your face then, Eleanor. You're probably gunning for it right there. And as an American, you do have a constitutional right to bear arms. So,
Yeah. Yeah, that's
um,
true.
however, you might be willing to shoot me for it, but you might not be willing to be shot yourself for it, unless there are severe life-ruining consequences as a result. At which point you may actually then risk life and limb to safeguard that reputation.
Hmm.
And this is the bulk of pistol duels, because if you are challenged to the duel, if I call you a coward and you call me out,
Yeah.
okay, and then we meet, and turning up to the duel proves what exactly? It proves you are not a coward. You are turning up to that duel. You are taking part in it. You are willing to face gunfire. This is the proof that you
Okay.
are not a coward. Okay, so the duel, despite its reputation, in these cases, actually does achieve something.
Okay. I
And
can
I
see
will
that. All right.
I
Okay.
will back that up with an example.
Okay,
This
go.
is a great example to have. So just let me get the date. 26th of May, 1789,
Hmm.
Wimbledon Common. Lieutenant Colonel Lennox versus His Royal Highness the Duke of York. Now, this all started because the Frederick Duke of York made an offhand comment that he had overheard comments that Lennox shouldn't have stood for. And that
Okay.
was it. Now, Lennox wrote to him once he found out about this and said, I've heard no such comment that I shouldn't have stood for. You are to retract this. Excuse me. At which point, the Duke of York refused. And Sir Lennox returned him a letter and said, right, in that case, I demand satisfaction. Now,
Hmm.
take this to its extreme. What you are looking at here is the Duke of York, a member of the royal family, currently second in line to the throne at the time,
Okay.
okay, has made an inference that Lennox should have stood up and done something about this comment. And can you see where that seed of cowardice is in there now? He's a lieutenant colonel, okay? If the army
Right.
buys this idea, considers him to not have the stones to stand up for himself there, and takes the option of cashiering him out, £750,000 retirement fund gone.
Ooh, okay. Yeah.
So that's it.
Yeah.
He is taking the consequences of this so seriously that he will call out, point a gun at, and fire at the second in line to the throne
Jesus
in a
Christ.
public
Okay.
park. And he shoots, and the report says that the pistol ball, singed the Duke's curl. He literally shot him along the side of the head. At which point, the Duke returned and said, satisfaction has been granted, and he fired into the air.
Okay.
Now
All right.
that's it's like you don't do this thing just from honor, or you do not call out the second in line to the throne. I mean, there are people out there that would willingly shoot Prince Harry, I know, but
Well,
you're not going to go and do that unless there are severe consequences for you if you don't.
yeah, okay. True.
There
Yeah.
there is our idea. So this idea of honor is more reputation. And like I say, it is the idea of cowardice that is the biggie here. Now, that
Hmm.
idea can come from some really, really bizarre places. It
Hmm.
really can. That the even slightest of insults, that if you're not seen to do something about it, then and you could, if you insult me, I could say, well, I'm meet me in 6 days time with a brace of pistols and we'll settle this like gentlemen.
Hmm.
At which point, of course, if you then go, no, okay, then I accept, you're fine, and that dispute is over.
Right.
So it's not
Okay.
ironclad that it's there. But yeah, that is our basis for this whole, what I consider to be a misconception about the duel. And it's not just army officers. If you look at somebody like I mentioned earlier, politicians,
Hmm. Hmm.
politicians should have trust and integrity in order to get that patronage. You need to be, not considered a liar. So if
Right.
you are called out, and politicians do fight duels, if you are called out as a liar,
Hmm.
then you're quite probably going to fight a duel if you're called out in Parliament, because parliamentary privilege means you can't sue somebody for libel or defamation of character. in this sort of, you've got no legal recourse to do it. So how do you almost prove it? Well, you go, right, I'm willing to stand by my words.
Yeah, okay.
I'm willing to stand by my words, even if you point a pistol at me.
Yeah.
There, that's made you think, hasn't it?
Yeah, quite so, quite so. Yeah. And I mean, I suppose this is an interesting thing too, because it also accounts for the fact of like, well, who's doing this, right? So it's going to be this subsect of society where you're putting your money where your mouth is, right? Like you're not going to like it's not like the cabbage seller down the street.
No, not at all.
It's just like a Ponzi guy is poncing most Ponzily, right? But
Yes, very
like,
much so. It's
yeah,
upper middle class kind of careerist style of people. Okay.
okay, yeah,
Aristocrats, at least kind of the sort of aristocrat that we would think of as being that learned aristocrat. They don't mind because they've got nothing to lose. They're not going to lose their house. They've already inherited their house. They're not going to lose their lands or anything like that. They've got nothing to gain by fighting a duel. So there's no point in calling one of them out.
yeah, yeah.
Yes, it's that very much. It's an upper middle class where you've got somewhere to advance to and you need to advance somewhere, or you want to advance somewhere and you need this reputation in order to do it. You're going to safeguard that reputation.
Yeah, I suppose, and this makes sense from a medieval context as well, because we get a lot of this in medieval society as well. And again, it's not honor, which I can understand, like Victorians probably misinterpreted this, but it is reputation. It's fama in Latin. And it's like, as you say, it's like your calling card. It's the thing that means that if you're a merchant from London and you show up in Bruges in order to trade wool, you've got a good reputation. Everyone says, "Oh yeah, you're going to want to work with this guy. He's definitely a trustworthy individual." And that being dented and damaged is a really, really serious thing, which is why a lot of medieval punishments involve like shame, and kind of like destroying people's reputations and destroying the fama. And also it's like, where we get ideas now of, for example, like slander or libel and things that come up where it's like, even on a smaller level, this is something that people would take to court, like common people would like take other people to court and be like, oh, she called me a whore, right? And things like that, where it's like, and then how am I meant to recover from this? So I do understand it more as a reputational thing than like an honor thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's exactly where I'd gone with it as well. And then once you start kind of pulling at that thread and going further into it, you see more and more of these cases of dueling being about an inference of cowardice, where there are some serious repercussions to do so. There are occasions I find where I'm struggling to see the repercussions myself.
Yeah. Okay.
So where we look at what have you got to lose by not fighting a duel, and this will crop up a little later on when I talk about like the legality of it. But we have two instances in British history where a duel has been fought by a prime minister whilst serving as prime minister. So one of these is the Duke of Wellington versus the Earl of Winchelsea, and this is for 21st of March 1829 on Battersea Fields. And where that comes about is that Winchelsea actually makes a statement in Parliament to infer that the Duke of Wellington doesn't have the stones to be open about his Catholic emancipation legislation.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see how that was just going to end in a brawl straight away.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. I don't know about dueling as a practice overall, but I do think politicians should be forced to duel each other.
Yeah, that's true.
You guys want to talk shit? That's fine. That's fine. Let's back it up. Let's go.
Let's
go. Let's put some oomph behind this, and if you don't do it, well, then we know you weren't serious about the legislation or whatever,
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, the phrase that Winchelsea uses in Parliament is he insidiously sowing the seeds of popery throughout every annal of the state.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, that's good flowery parliamentary language there.
Oh, we don't make them like that anymore. Damn. Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
Because standing up and going, "Oi, Arthur, you're a secret Catholic," is just
I would,
not parliamentary language.
I could just hear them all going, whoa, 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 after that one.
Yeah, waving their bits of paper around.
That is a banger. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But what he's implying in there is that the Duke of Wellington, as Prime Minister, just doesn't have the character to be open
Hmm.
about the Catholic
Hmm.
emancipation that he's doing.
Yeah.
At which point, Wellington calls him out for a duel. There's months of letter writing between seconds. Um, in the end, the Earl of Winchelsea actually consents to apologise, but does feel that he's done such an affront that he ought to receive the Duke's fire. And they do. They meet at Wimbledon Common, 21st of March. Shots are exchanged, and it is in the report is both fire wide.
Okay.
So you
Yeah.
don't have to kill your opponent. You turned up, you proved you're a coward, and proved you're not a coward.
Yeah. Hmm.
They fire wide. Now, Winchelsea, we know, fired wide. There is some debate about whether or not Wellington fired wide or whether or not he was just a crap shot.
Okay, yeah, because I've definitely heard like rumors about duels, right? Where people intentionally set sights wide, or they like, I mean, that's one of the rumors surrounding the Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr
Mm-hmm.
one, where like that Alexander Hamilton had wide shots on, so Aaron Burr was attempting to miss
Yeah.
and like ended up shooting him anyway. Where because like he was like, no, I'm gonna do the honorable thing, and like it wasn't expected. But that's just like some rumor I heard somewhere. I don't know. Like, so
Yeah.
I'm cool and I get good gossip, you know.
I haven't looked that much into American dueling because it's you're all on to make sense out of British dueling.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
trying to make sense out of French or German dueling is just unbelievable.
Okay. All
That's
right. Yeah.
that's really a different culture there, which is why swords always seem to remain the weapon in French dueling culture, because that's very much seems to be steeped in revenge,
Okay. I see.
whereas this is
Hmm.
steeped in kind of just proving a point. But yeah, from what I understand of Burr and Hamilton, is that Burr had somewhat altered the pistol and had done considerable amounts of practice,
Right.
which meant that he
Okay.
wasn't approaching. And it's a very interesting duel, actually, because what that duel does is like Burr wins that duel and he is utterly ruined by it.
Yeah. 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 Completely.
Utterly. He's one of the few people whose whose life is actually completely ruined by surviving a duel. I
Mm.
will grant you he
Mm.
doesn't get as tough a deal as Hamilton got,
Yeah.
but yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was my brief moment of romance as I went to the site of that duel on my honeymoon with my wife.
Oh, that's beautiful, Paul.
I know, I
Wow.
know. You can
Lucky
just
woman. Yes. Yeah.
yeah, we have one day each where each one that schleps around the other one while they take care of their interests. So yeah, I was on the ferry over to New Jersey and over to Weehawken to do that. You can see why she married me, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Duh. That's what the people want, you know.
Oh man. Eleanor, before we before we talk any more about dueling and everything, can you talk a little bit about the medieval aspects of it,
Mm.
like the trial by combat type thing and how that came about because that was a real thing for a
Yeah.
long time.
It certainly was a real thing, and it basically existed for all the same reasons that Paul was just kind of noting. So,
Mhm.
trial by combat is something that you use very specifically if your pants are incredibly fancy, all right, and like someone has pissed you off. And it comes down to a few things. Now, you might do trial by combat because you are a pretty good fighter and your opponent is not, and you think that you stand a pretty good chance of winning a trial by combat as opposed to necessarily like in front of the courts, right? Because like say you your opponent is kind of like a foppish guy, but he's in real good with the king, then odds are the court is not going to find in your favor if you've got a property dispute. And let's be real, a lot of trial by combat, like most trials in the Middle
Mhm.
Ages, it comes down to property. And now you
Mhm.
might have insulted each other on top of that on the way to getting this, but most medieval legal anything is about property. And
Mhm.
I would say that even if it's about things like, when, as we saw in the movie The Jewel, which again, like, let's not take that movie seriously, although it whips.
Mhm.
If you, for example, sexually assault somebody else's wife, that's a property
Mhm.
dispute. That's what that it's not like a moral thing. for medieval people because medieval people are fucked up about that. And so if it's something like that, then you can kind of call upon this. And we definitely do see that. For example, if you sexually assault somebody's daughter or their wife, oftentimes
Mhm.
they will be like, yeah, no, we're trial by combating this. That's what's going on right now, because they'll be pissed off. But it is basically a way to say, okay, so there's some accusation of some kind, and you fight it out, right? This became a little bit more famous in popular culture as a result of Game of Thrones, but it exists throughout the medieval period and across the continent. Our first records of it are Italian in nature, which is unsurprising because they spicy, all right? Like a etc. But we certainly see it within the Holy Roman Empire, and that is again unsurprising. Because if something's going on in the Italian lands, it will bleed into Germanic use a lot of the time,
Mhm.
just as a result of the umbrella coverage of the Holy Roman Empire at some point in time. And it does also get all the way up here into England. And now Paul reliably tells me that the last trial by combat here in England was it 1818? Did he
Um,
say?
Not strictly. It's the last time that trial by combat is successfully brought into a UK
Okay.
court is
Okay.
1818 by Abraham Thornton. And he stands accused of the murder of a young woman called Mary Ashford.
Hmm.
And there was very little evidence to actually support that case at all.
Okay.
And he was acquitted of the murder. And it
Hmm.
was the family of Mary Ashford that came to try and appeal that.
Hmm.
Now, bear in mind, this is before the Court of Appeal actually exists.
Okay, right. Yeah.
So they come to appeal that decision. In order to kind of appeal that decision, you do need new evidence. They didn't bring any with them.
Hmm.
And in the appeal court, as kind of a last thing of, I can't really go any further with this. They're just going to keep doing this and doing this and doing this until it's actually finalized by court decision.
Hmm.
So he throws down a gauntlet in the courtroom and demands trial by combat, which is still on the statute books at the time.
Oh, that's
So it has
sweet.
to actually be granted by the judge. They consult the law, and this can go ahead. And the only reason it doesn't is that Mary Ashford's brother, the accuser, actually won't face Abraham Thornton in combat.
Oh, there
And
you
as a
go.
result of that, Thornton is once again acquitted of the crime. And they then go on to, and this is Parliament working really remarkably quickly because they then repeal that in 1819
Oh yeah,
and
they're like,
get it off.
get this out of here.
But that's not the last time it's brought into a courtroom.
Okay, all right.
So the last time that we have trial by combat brought into a UK courtroom is,
Oh, is this
drum
this?
roll please, 2002.
I was gonna say, was this like the guy down in Cornwall? Am I remembering this
Yeah.
correctly? Yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah.
this guy is an unemployed mechanic called Leon Humphreys, and he basically insists on his ancient right of trial by combat to avoid, of all things, a £25 fine from DVLA for failing to declare his motorbike off road.
I respect it.
I just have so much respect for this man. Yes.
Yeah, the beauty of this is as well, it caught DVLA by surprise that they actually had to go and check.
No.
So at some point, somebody in the DVLA office is sitting there going, I might have to fight this guy.
That's so good. I love it. Just aim wide, bro. Aim
Bring
wide.
the bring the bureaucrat out here. Let's go. You want to give me a $30 fine for not cutting my grass enough? Fuck off. I'm gonna shoot you. I'm gonna shoot you in the leg and watch you bleed out.
I think
Leave
that
me
you should at
alone.
least have to like wrestle about it. You should at least
Yeah,
like
yeah,
have to
yeah.
be ready to wrestle. Yeah. Yeah. For
Yeah, I mean,
sure.
I'm not entirely opposed to the return of trial by combat, but
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just like we like what are the
I,
parameters? I guess
I
that's
mean,
my
let's be
question.
clear. I'm a fucking coward, but like it's
But
fucking
I would
funny to
absolutely get
watch
into a
this.
slap fight about
Yeah.
it. I would
Oh yeah.
100% like, this is perhaps, a Britishism, but we love nothing more than like a friendly punch up outside a chicken shop. Like that's what we're about. This
Mhm.
is this is our beautiful culture. So, if we could do this to get out of parking fines, for example, I think that you know, it would go over very well.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
it would certainly have public support, I think.
But yeah, so I mean, the point is, this certainly did exist, right?
Mhm.
And and it existed right up into the modern period. And sometimes we will try it again. I don't think it ever existed in the American context. I don't think it's something that was like transported over along with British rule.
To be fair, you
But
guys have combat without the trial.
that's true.
It
That's
it was there. Trial by combat in America is technically not illegal. There's no
okay.
law. There's no law any, well, at least not federal law or most state laws that says you cannot do trial by combat. And one guy tried it in the Chancery Court, the Delaware Chancery Court in like I think it was the late 90s,
Oh, nice.
and they were like, yeah, no, that's dueling. And he's like, no, they're separate things. They're like, no, that's dueling. And there's a federal law that says dueling is illegal, so you can't do it. But like some guy did try it here in the Chancery Court, which is actually a lot like the guy in England. Now that you mention it, like the Chancery Court's in there, like you didn't pay your, whatever, we're suspending your license. Like, okay, well,
Okay. All
let's
right.
let's
Well,
let's kill each other about it, huh?
let's
Huh?
fucking go. All right.
How's that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I
Yeah,
love
that's what it is in America. But no, I don't think any actual trial by combat by that name has ever happened here
yeah.
that I
I
know
mean,
of.
I suppose that I will say from a historical standpoint that so trial by combat absolutely did exist. But the reason why the last duel, like there's a story that the last duel could be based on, right? Could be written, is that
Hmm.
it was still fairly rare, right? Like it's
Yeah,
something
yeah,
that you
yeah.
could do, but it was the kind of shit where people were like, "Yo, like let's write this down. This is interesting."
Yeah.
Right. It's not something that happens every day. It's certainly a spectacle and it's certainly meaningful. So, whilst it's something that you could fall back on, it's not happening on a daily basis. It's not like rich people are waking up and they're like, nah, I don't feel like going to court. I'd rather do this, right? And what is much more common across all sectors of society is instead what we call trial by ordeal.
Hmm.
And trial by ordeal is essentially like, we're gonna torture him a little bit,
Yeah.
right? So it's like and that can be various things. The rack enters
Yeah.
into this a lot. Um,
I'd just like to
Pressing,
say on the rack
yeah.
that, having looked at these, I think there's going to be a sweet spot on the rack that sorts my back out.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
really
I
Oh
open to
yeah.
genuinely
trying that.
believe this. I genuinely believe this. Yes. Like
Yeah.
I'd be looking at the rack and I'm like, I don't know, man, for a little while. Like,
I'm
Yeah.
tempted to try it. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Or you could
Yeah,
just go to a chiropractor. They do the same damn thing.
exactly.
Like,
Oh,
well, there's a 10% chance this fixes my back problem and a 90% chance I end up paralyzed for the rest of my life. Let's do it.
let's go. Yeah,
Yeah.
like I mean, real middle age hours out here, brah. Like, I don't know, man. Like some light torture, why not? I
Yeah.
would torture every day of my life with this sciatica, etc. But uh but yeah,
But
like I
go
think a
ahead.
lot of the time like what they use a lot of the time though is fire. Like they'll be like, you put your hand in the fire or you hold a hot thing. Like there's a
Yeah.
lot of heating instruments up. Uh
Yeah.
and that sucks and people don't want to do it ordinarily. And then but people also do kind of get through it. And I think there is a sort of like bloody mindedness where you can just sort of shut your brain off and be like, no, like we're just going to do it. But trial by ordeal then gets expanded, especially in the early modern period, and we see a lot of this in the for example, the witch panics. So like that's what's going on whenever someone is put in the ducking stool until they drown, or until they admit they're a witch, or like there's rather a lot of torturing witches. And now you see this also in, for example, Salem and the Salem witch trials. It's not a trial, but one of the guys he refuses to enter a plea because if you enter a plea one way or another, the state gets to seize your lands.
Hmm.
So in order to force him to enter a plea, they crush him to death with stones over a course of several days. And it's like it's not really a trial, but
Yeah.
they got it from trial by ordeal. So it's like basically they have you lay on the ground, they put a board on top of you, and they keep adding stones to it.
Yeah. Margaret of Clitheroe went the same way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So like that's a big one. And that's way more common than trial by combat or dueling, but people like to talk about dueling because it's sweet. So,
Yeah.
it's like it just doesn't get it's interesting because people either think of it as just I mean it is torture, trial by ordeal. It
Yeah.
certainly is. But people tend to think of it as like people would be tortured and then you would get the evidence and then you would go on trial, but that's not how it works. It's like the torture is the trial.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. It's like there's less of a there isn't that step in the middle where like and then it is brought to a court of your peers and something legitimate happens, right? Like no, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can have trial by cheese sandwich.
What?
That's a Saxon thing.
Okay, no, I'm sorry. You're gonna need to expand, Paul.
Okay. So this is a Saxon tradition called corsned.
Okay, all right.
And it is that sort of trial though, where basically you are fed
Mm-hmm.
bread and used milk cheese that has been blessed, and the idea being is that the guilty person who is lying about their guilt will reject that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it is rumored that I think it's Harold Godwinson's brother
Okay.
died as a result of this, but the only source that we have for that is a forged copy of the Croyland Chronicle.
Nice. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Okay.
But there is an occasion, I think it's 16th, 17th century, when you mentioned witch panics there and the Flower Sisters, where one of them says, well, give me the blessed bread, for I won't be able to eat it if I'm guilty.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently the poor woman choked to death on it as well, which kind of proved the
No.
point. Yes.
Oh,
Oh, fuck me. Oh no. Because I was gonna be like, I'm taking the sandwich one all day. I can knock some sandwiches back.
if they made it into a grilled cheese sandwich, like, yeah,
I'm
let's go.
intentionally getting
Yep.
in trouble,
Yep.
to get the sandwich.
Give,
Thank you.
give me the grilled cheese. Yeah.
Sammy
If
time.
it's just like regular old bread and like cold cheese, I don't know. We're gonna have some trouble with that. I could probably deal with it,
Now you
but
gotta add pickle. So you've probably never had Branston pickle, right? This is
I
so
don't know
like a
what that
cheese and
is.
pickle sandwich. This is like peak
Yeah.
British culture. So it's like it's kind of sweet and it's kind of like what if you had caramelized onions but they're cold and then you eat that with cheese.
Ooh,
It's
ooh,
very
okay.
good. It's
Okay.
very good. I'm just
I
saying.
do like caramelized onions. That is
Yeah.
It's
good.
it's addictive stuff. Yeah.
It's really good, man. Yeah.
Uh, um,
Anyway.
yeah, yeah. So Paul, you were talking earlier about the legality of dueling. Like how, what what are we looking at there? Because it was obviously a resort for some people. So,
hmm
like how did they go about, I guess,
Well,
formalizing that?
I get asked a lot when I'm out at events, because we will kind of do a recreation of pistol dueling and all its supposed rules and so forth. But I get asked a lot, when did they make dueling illegal?
Hmm.
And the thing is, dueling has always been illegal, at least in the UK. Basically it's always been illegal to shoot another person.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is no question about it. In fact, if you're of that particular flavor, thou shalt not kill goes all the way back to the Bible and has always been illegal.
Hmm.
Right.
However, it is incredibly difficult to successfully prosecute,
Okay.
because what you're going to need is, in order to get a conviction for willful murder, number one, you need to prove intent to kill. And intent to kill actually isn't a feature of most of our pistol duels. You're not turning up to kill your opponent. You're turning up to basically survive and prove you're not a coward.
Right.
So the intent to kill there is gone. There are a couple of instances where you can prove that. Secondly, in order to prove that, what you're going to need is two witnesses that are going to stand up in court and kind of state that.
hmm hmm
So what you've got present at a duel is typically you would have 5 or 6 people. So you've got two principals, you've got 2 seconds. Seconds are very important. Okay. And then you'll have a doctor and possibly a priest, depending on how you think this is going to turn out. Okay. There were very few other people. Now, it was a common practice for both the doctor and the priest to turn around at the time that the shots were fired. So they can't see who shot who. And
Okay.
therefore they can't, under oath, say, I saw him shoot him. The seconds are not going to get involved in the trial because they're going to massively incriminate themselves. Three important words here: accessory to murder.
Mm.
So
Okay.
what you're going to find is that you don't have a great many witnesses and you have insufficient evidence to be able to actually convict somebody of willful murder, even if you can try and prove the intent to kill. There's nobody there that's going to stand up in court and say, I saw him shoot him. Now, there are
Right.
a couple of
Mhm.
occasions. There is one, I forget the names of the principals, but this was a little more than a brawl. Okay, because this was an argument that turned up in a barracks, and the person basically went out, got two pistols, gave him one, and shot him straight away in front of 13 people in a barrack room. Now,
Oh.
there you've got a stack load of witnesses that are not involved, and
Right.
you've got a
Okay.
clear intent to kill because he shot him virtually at point blank.
Mm-hmm.
And what you've got there is not a duel, it's a murder.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That
he
doesn't.
was executed for murder, for willful murder.
Fair
But just
play.
to give you a few statistics, let me just pull up to the source that I got, which
Ooh.
is so this is just in the reign of George the Third.
Mm-hmm.
So that is, I've just lost my place in the page. Give me a second.
Don't worry about it.
Here we are. So just in the reign of George the Third, that we know of as well, there are 172 duels fought, 69 are killed.
Nice.
In 3 cases, principals killed each other. There are
Okay.
96 people wounded. And in that time, so that is 1 in 5 combatants lose their life in a duel.
Okay.
During that entire reign, okay, there are 18 trials. 6 people are acquitted, 7 are found guilty of manslaughter, and 3 of murder, 2 of whom were executed, and the other imprisoned.
So those are pretty good odds, really,
Yeah, that
on the
gives you an
whole.
idea. I mean, out of all that, you've basically got 2 people hanged for willful murder out of over 170 duels.
Okay.
Okay, so it's very, very difficult to prosecute. Also, you tend to find that you're getting prosecuted by that strata of society that understands as well. But
Okay.
most deaths are accidental, which is why you get manslaughter convictions.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Gotcha.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
you don't get many of them because you've got a lack of evidence.
Right. Because like no snitching, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, well, you're not going to incriminate yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, if Steve, sorry, if Luke shoots me,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and you're his second, you're not going to stand up in court and go, "Yep, I saw my close friend shoot this guy, and I helped. I arranged, I went and got him the gun." I mean, you're just not going to incriminate yourself in doing so,
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and they can't force you to. So it becomes incredibly difficult to actually prosecute.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So there's nothing within law that says that, if a duel takes place, that
Mm-hmm.
that is itself illegal. After all, if myself and my good friend turn up in Hyde Park and at a quiet time and shoot pistols at each other, but deliberately delope, aim to miss,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and so forth, and we consider that as having settled our differences, the only crime that the only crime that we're guilty of now would be the illegitimate possession of a handgun,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. True. Okay.
and possibly discharging a firearm in a public place.
All right. Yeah. 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 Fair play.
But there's no intent to kill there. I'm not doing so. But you've got to have that proof.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
long may that tradition carry on, I say as well.
I quite like that. No, I absolutely do. I do.
You do get some occasions where people come out, and really quite important people come out and start giving character references at people's trials. So we've got a trial of it's the McNamara and Montgomery trial. So it's a Captain McNamara versus Colonel Montgomery's fought in
Mm-hmm.
1803. Primrose Fields or Hyde Park. I have sources that suggest both.
Okay.
Incidentally, might sound daft to fight a duel in Hyde Park. It's not that public a place at the time.
Right.
At the time, it's on the outskirts of London. It's why we hang people there.
Oh, I guess that makes
There's
sense. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
nothing beyond it. You haven't got the other side of Hyde Park built up yet. And even
Hmm.
then, when I was researching this, myself and Kyle, my former co-host on History Rage, actually went to a place in Hyde Park where we knew a duel was fought. We went in good weather at 1 o'clock in the afternoon when everybody was in the area was having lunch in the park.
Right.
We could actually see 12 people. That's at noon in a busy day in Hyde Park.
Oh wow, that's
So if
crazy.
you go
Okay.
at dawn,
Yeah.
nobody's there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, for
that's
sure.
the Hyde Park is huge. But this is a duel that's it's a bizarre duel because it's fought to really defend the honor of their dogs.
Oh, doggies.
Yes, they're walking their Newfoundlands. The Newfoundlands get into a fight. Montgomery has said, "Whose is this dog? I'll knock them down." Now, can you see there? That's a threat of violence against Captain McNamara. Is he going to do
Yeah.
something about that? Or is
Okay.
he going to be a coward? And this
Right.
escalates to that point where they do actually meet, and Montgomery is killed
Oh
in
God.
that duel, and McNamara is prosecuted for murder. He actually has a character witness statement from Lord Nelson.
Oh really?
Yeah,
Do you know what? I need a character witness statement on the doggies too. And also
the
I
dogs
like
were
that
fine.
I
Yeah,
love that it's two Newfoundlands too. I love Newfies, me.
I mean,
Yes.
anybody came at my dog, I'd totally shoot them.
Do you know what? Like if I just really don't think you get to talk about my dog like that. So, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. For
yeah, I
sure. For
will
sure.
totally defend the honor of my dog.
Absolutely would wrestle it out at the very least. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Okay,
Yeah,
I've got a
so to some extent, it isn't illegal, but
hmm
the actions that you involve within a duel are going to break some laws,
okay.
dependent on how that goes.
Right. Okay, like so I guess I we've already had some of your faves, but I was gonna talk a little bit about favorite duels because I've kind of got a favorite duel, which is it's early modern.
Hmm.
But I like the one where Tycho Brahe loses his nose.
Oh yes, he
Okay,
doesn't
because
like a golden nose.
right, okay, because like everybody knows that Tycho Brahe has got this like golden nose. So I mean, like the golden one was for special occasions. Like he had like an everyday nose, which was
Like he
brass.
has a dress nose.
Yeah, he's got a dress nose, right?
That's like bugger your decent cravat.
And he got into a duel with his cousin, like it's a distant cousin, like a third cousin. But his cousin, Amandarup of Parsberg, got into a drunk argument with Tycho Brahe about which one of them was a better mathematician.
You
And
see
they
what I
were,
mean about European dueling culture? It's insane.
and like they're incredibly drunk, like mad drunk. And it's like a sword fight because they're, Germanic. And that's what they go for. And that's how he lost his nose. So it's like, it's just so stupid. It's like, maybe you guys are drunk. And they're like, nah, like we're just going for it, right? And it's like his own cousin, which makes it even funnier. And it's I just, yeah. Yeah. Like also I'm not sure that I've got like the stones to like go to the mat over, if one of my cousins was like, I'm a better historian than you, and they were also a historian, I'd probably be like, okay, I probably wouldn't get into that as an
Yeah, you can at
argument,
least
but
go, oh, I've got this many books or this many papers
yeah,
published. You
yeah,
can prove
exactly.
it at that point.
And
I
again,
suppose my favorite that I know happened,
okay.
or at least that I as much as historians can know something happened,
Mm,
is a Major Sweetman versus a Captain Watson. This takes place in Cobham, 4th of
mm-hmm,
January, 1796.
mm,
And I love this duel.
mm.
We don't know what started it all off. We think it was a quarrel at an opera, but we don't know. But we do know what finished it.
Okay.
So they met at Cobham to exchange fire. They went for the standard 10 paces. Now that's not a standard. You can have whatever rules that you like,
Mm-hmm,
providing
mm-hmm.
it's agreed between the two principals. There is one duel where people throw billiard balls at each other until one goes down. That is actually a
Yeah.
fatal duel. Um,
Ouch.
yeah,
Okay. All right.
but this one is they go to the 10 paces. Now, Major Sweetman was really, really short sighted. And at 10 paces, turns out he couldn't actually see his opponent. So he
Okay.
called out to complain at this. And the seconds agreed that they could close distance up until a point that Sweetman could see where Watson was. They
Right.
closed to a distance of 4 yards. This is like having a gunfight in my living room. And as a result of this, they exchanged fire. Sweetman was shot clean through the heart and died instantly. To give
Whoa.
you an idea of just how bad a shot Sweetman still was, at
Mhm.
that range, Watson was only wounded in the thigh.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's just one of the things
Jesus.
that we've represented before, because we will actually stand with guns drawn on each other to show what 4 yards apart looks like.
Fuck me. I I can't masculinity is a cage, you guys. Like this is one of the main things I'm learning this episode.
Yeah,
It's
very
like,
much so. I mean, the French have an even more bizarre version called it's known as the duel en Michel or the handkerchief duel.
okay.
And that is basically two people stood together, pistol barrel to pistol barrel, where you
Okay.
can put a handkerchief in between the two and that's it. This is said to be fought in a freshly dug grave because one person or
Oh,
both people are going to be staying behind. But I've found French dueling culture is very much about kill your opponent.
okay. Right. So
I
it's
haven't gone into the graphics as to why.
what you know, the French.
Well, yes,
I mean, I
absolutely.
guess I don't know. Look, it's a beautiful culture, etc. Okay, all right. I guess I've got one question for you, like about crazy duels, kind
Mhm.
of as we wrap it up. Because okay, so I got asked to comment on the alleged hot air balloon duel the other day.
Yes,
And
yes.
I'm just wondering what you, if you could, can you tell our listeners about this and what you think of it?
Okay, so the idea of the hot air balloon duel, again, this is French, so gear
Mm-hmm.
up for crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But this is allegedly two academics, a Monsieur Grandpré, a Monsieur Piquet, who have a dispute over the affections of a woman who is a Paris dancer.
Mm-hmm.
And they agree to, because they're academics and they think on a higher plane, they agree to settle their differences on a higher plane. So the idea is that they're going to fight this duel over the rooftops of Paris, about 1,500 feet above, in hot air
Oh my
balloons with
God.
blunderbusses.
Mm-hmm.
You can see where this is going to go. Monsieur Piquet misses, Monsieur
Wouldn't hold on,
Grandpré.
I'm sorry. Would it firing a shotgun in a fucking hot air balloon just push you further? It's fine.
Well, yeah, but
It's
they
fine.
were aiming for the other balloon, allegedly. So
Okay.
what you're trying to
Okay.
do is like,
Okay.
and
Okay.
which is why they were using blunderbusses, because that's
That's
the one where
okay.
you could
That
just like chuck anything you want in it.
okay, yeah. Yeah,
It's-
that makes way more sense because I was like, why would you try like trying to shoot each other from like 50 paces with a shotgun is hard. Like, why would you? Yeah, but that makes more
Yeah,
sense.
the
Okay,
actual
sorry, go ahead.
news article that highlights this as well has got a really telling phrase in it as well, which is uh, Monsieur Le Piquet's balloon collapsed and the car descended with frightful rapidity, and Le Piquet and his second were
mhm.
dashed to pieces on the rooftops as a result.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
Yeah.
that stones to that second who got in that
I
balloon
just
with him.
can't with the second. Like one of the things that really does it for me about this one though is that there was like a month lead time in this allegedly.
If not more.
So there was like theoretically a month and like the seconds are like, nah, dog, you got this. Like absolutely kill me.
No, it's
As
no, because the
like
role of a second is to prevent the duel happening
yeah, yeah, yeah.
without
Like
affronting honor. So the you would if I challenged you to a duel, we would each appoint our seconds, and then our seconds' job is to sort this dispute out
mm-hmm,
without that duel happening. And if they can't do so, then they agree for the duel. So
mm-hmm,
that's why you have the lead time that's coming up to this, rather than your second going, "Go on, you got this, you can nail him." It's like,
mm-hmm,
no, he's offering you this. He's offering you 10 guineas and a written apology in the Times.
mm-hmm,
Are you would will you consider that to be satisfaction? And like, no, I won't. And it will have to put it in the Guardian and the Spectator, and I want 50 guineas. And that
yeah.
negotiation goes back and forward until they run out of things to say, and they go, "Okay, well, have I then?"
Mm,
But yeah, the hot air balloon duel is. I have questions.
mm-hmm,
I'm not going to sit here and categorically state it didn't happen, but there are
mm-hmm,
some things there that really give me some question.
yeah.
Number one, we don't actually know if it was a hot air balloon or a gas balloon.
Okay.
Okay. And this is important because if it's a hot air balloon, the physics don't work.
Oh.
Because you can shoot holes in a hot air balloon, and basically all you need to do is get hot air to go in faster than it's coming out, and you will
Hmm.
not plummet.
Okay. All
Okay,
right.
so and if it's a gas balloon, that's something completely different. You
Hmm.
can pierce that
Hmm.
and all the gas goes out, and then you are going to fall like crazy. But at this stage, we just don't know. It's not specified.
Mm.
Secondly, and believe me, I have searched, I cannot find a single French source for this duel
Oh.
at all. The earliest reference I've been able to find, bear in mind, this duel was alleged to have been fought in, well, you've got a number of sources, but the dates are different. I've got 3rd of June 1808
Hmm.
for this, and I've got it as early as 1803, but that could be a misprint as
Hmm.
well, because that doesn't specify a date. Okay, but I haven't found a single source. The earliest source that I've found that I've been able to actually point at is the Northampton Mercury, 23rd of July, 1808, which
So
has
it
an article about this duel in it. But
so it might be English people being like, this is what the French are like.
yeah,
Like,
very much so, because at this time, you've got, if you need to fill column spaces, journalists do just make shit up.
mm, mm.
And this sounds like a good thing to have a laugh at the French with as well. They're fighting over the affections of this woman. One of them, his name translates as Mr. Good Catch,
Nice.
and
Okay,
it's,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. And I know, I'm not going to say they categorically didn't, but, I found two sources in English newspapers that talk about this duel, but nothing in any sort of, and bear in mind, if you're going to have that sort of balloon gunfire related hijinks across the rooftops of Paris,
You
Paris journalists are going to write about it.
yeah, you would think that that would like be worth a mention. Yeah.
Yeah, it would crop up anywhere other than, yeah, and the bulk of sources that you find in like the newspaper archives are all Victorians harking back to this.
Okay. All right.
So I'm not convinced. And it's like the Petticoat duel of 1792 as well, which is the allegedly goes that a lady Almeria Braddock and a Mrs. Elphinstone had a falling out over afternoon tea, where Mrs. Elphinstone had apparently said, and you'll feel this, ladies, you will.
Hmm.
Apparently said, "Well, you were a beautiful woman once."
Oh,
Yeah.
hey,
Hey,
oh, okay.
ooh,
Yeah, she's thrown
ah.
out in the street. What follows is apparently 6 months worth of letter writing until this escalates to the point where the two ladies appear in Hyde Park to settle this with pistols.
Hmm.
They both fire shots. The only casualty of the first shot is Lady Almeria's hat, which is shot clean off. And then the two ladies pause and then put down their guns and then pick up swords and have at each other again until Mrs. Elphinstone is wounded in the right arm and consents to write a letter of apology.
Huh.
I can not only find any source that this actually existed, that it's a primary source, it's mentioned in a few dueling books, but nobody ever seems to say where it's from. I also
Okay.
cannot find any trace at all of a Lady Almeria Braddock existing.
Ah, there you go.
There are several Mrs. Elphinstons, but I cannot find an Almeria Braddock
Hmm.
at the time. And people that are awarded that title generally are recorded in places. So I
Yeah.
can't find it. So again, I just, and I'm sad to say it because both those stories are freaking
They're
phenomenal,
so good.
but I
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
don't think it's the case. If
Yeah.
anybody out there has evidence for either of these, please send it my way because I want to
I
believe.
want
I am totally mouldering this shit.
yeah, absolutely. Ugh.
Yeah.
Well, Paul, if anybody out there has enjoyed this so much, where can the good listeners find you and more like this?
Okay, so if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can follow me on Twitter at Paul Bavill, or you can follow the podcast at History Rage or historyrage.com. We basically ask historians such as Eleanor, who is coming
Yeah.
up in 2 weeks' time, if you want to subscribe to us on Patreon,
Woo!
what is the one thing that you wish everybody would just stop believing? And then we light that blue touch paper and let them rant. So at time of recording, I've got 135 episodes in.
Hmm.
And I'm just keeping going because, as Eleanor will testify, there's a lot of angry historians out there.
Yeah, we're mad. It's a real historians podcast, so a lot of us are on there. I absolutely do recommend you all check it out.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Paul, thanks so much for coming on the show. Eleanor, what's going on with you?
I wrote a blog last week. I'll have you all know. So
Hey,
you go
hey.
check it out over at going-medieval.com. I wrote a little something about people who make up for like fake medieval quote unquote artifacts and why they do it and what's in it for them. You can check me out on the socials as usual at Going Medieval. And yeah, otherwise, please leave me alone. I'm very tired. Thank you.
Yeah.
Actually, don't
I'm,
you guys are allowed to bother me. I like you all. Just,
I'm Luke. I'm Luke is amazing on the stuff. Check me out or whatever. Don't. It's fine. You can find my old show, People's History of the Old Republic. It's about Star Wars. Folks, folks,
Mm.
we love it. Everybody loves Star Wars. That
Everybody loves
thing
Star
that
Wars.
everybody always has universal good opinions about. All right.
That's right.
Everyone, thank you all so much for listening, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye bye.